Good morning. Thank you, Reverend Jackson. It is an honor to be here with you. It's a particular honor to sit at the same table with Reverend Vivian. I was remembering, I think it was 2013, when President Obama bestowed the Medal of Freedom on you, a well-deserved honor for a lifetime of service and leadership. And I want to say thank you. Senator Claiborne, Representative Ammons, keep up the fight. Thank you for what you're doing day in and day out, because you got a lot of work to do here. You got a governor who doesn't believe in the values of opportunity, and you've been fighting the fight every single day. So thank you for what you're doing. And my mentor, John Rogers, is also here, a good friend that I got to know in the Obama administration. And to all of you in labor, thank you for bringing us the weekend, okay? Thank you for bringing us the middle class. You know, there was a study that just came out from the National Bureau of Economic Research that said, it was studying the union movement in the 20th century. And it said the high point of American unions coincided with the low point of American wage inequality in the 20th century. Let me repeat that. The high point of American unions coincided with the low point of American wage inequality in the 20th century. That's what the union movement has done. You've brought us the middle class. When unions succeed, the middle class succeeds. When unions succeed, communities succeed. And that's why I'm so honored to be here. And this is not my first rodeo with Reverend Jackson. My first time, I think it was 2010. We were in Wall Street. We were talking about the foreclosure crisis, which was decimating African American and Latino communities. The corrosive power of fine print transforming the American dream and the American nightmare. And I appreciated your leadership back then. A couple of years later, I came here to Chicago, and we talked about both the challenges and opportunities confronting Latino and African American communities. And sitting here and watching Isara coming up here is an illustration of our joint destiny, the work that we continue to do together. I had the privilege of coming here as Labor Secretary to talk about jobs and justice. 2 weeks into my tenure, I had the privilege of going to the 50th anniversary commemoration of the March on Washington. And for me, that was what my life was about, because the March on Washington was a march for jobs and indeed a march for justice. And again, it was such an honor to be here working with all of you on these issues. We have been here and we will continue to fight. I come here wearing a different hat, but frankly, the cause is the same. It's the cause of opportunity. It's the cause of inclusion. And I would actually argue that this meeting that we're having here today may be the most important one of all, because this is the most serious stress test ever on our democracy. And we need to be together, and we need to be fighting together. And you look at what we saw, you look at how we need to go forward, and I am confident that we can do this. I come to you not only with a sense of purpose and seriousness, but with a sense of optimism. And I have optimism because I get to sit next to Reverend Vivian and Reverend Jackson, and they understand what it's like to get hit in the head, to get jailed. And as the song of the movement goes, when we fall down, we get up. We get up even stronger. We get up with greater purpose. And that's what it's about. And everybody, that's what we've been doing. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And we're going to get up and fight this president, but we're also going to get up and lead with our values as Democrats. There are so many issues that we need to keep fighting on. And you mentioned, Reverend Jackson, the issue of health care. You look at the health care proposal, and the thing that we must start with is, it is not a health care proposal. It is a massive tax cut for wealthy people masquerading as a health care proposal. And we must understand that. Everywhere I go, I was on the train last week from New York. 2 people on that train ride tap me on the shoulder. They say, "Are you Tom Perez? I got to tell you my story." You know, a parent whose kid is on the autism spectrum. Medicaid is their lifeline. It enables them to stay in the home. Another person with diabetes finally got health care coverage. Another person who talked to me about their triplets, one of whom was hospitalized for 9 months at a cost of $1.3 million because of the Affordable Care Act. They aren't in bankruptcy. This is what's at risk. The opioid epidemic does not discriminate. It is in every corner of this country. And when you have a proposal that's going to make it harder for people to get access, whether it's here in Chicago or whether it's in McDowell County, West Virginia, there's something wrong with that picture. And I'm confident that you will see a proposal offered next week or whenever they take it up. Someone will say, we're going to add $50 billion to deal with the opioid epidemic. And that's going to sound like a lot of money to some. Well, folks, if I told you yesterday that I'm taking $1 away from you, and I tell you today, I got a deal for you, I'm going to give you 20 cents back, would you take that deal? That's exactly what they're trying to do. Medicaid, 60% of people in nursing homes are funded by Medicaid. 60%. We are a strong nation because we are a compassionate nation. We are a strong nation because we understand that health care is a right and not a privilege. And so we are continuing to fight, and we need your help, because the reason we've been successful so far is because of you. You understand organizing. That's what you've been all about. That's your DNA, is organizing. And we need to continue to organize. We need to look at this budget that they have proposed. I've always said budgets are moral documents. They tell you a lot about the values and the priorities of a community. Look at what's happened in my old agency. Job training, which is a lifeline for people here in Chicago and elsewhere. I came to Chicago a number of times and saw apprenticeship programs at work. Apprenticeship, the union movement has the original patent on apprenticeship. And you've done great work. And we worked hard to take that to further scale. And now they want to chop it. Apprenticeship is the other college, except without the debt. And when we invest in programs, when we invest in pre-apprenticeship programs that give pathways to opportunity, like we've been doing in the Obama administration, those are remarkable opportunities. But no, that's not what they're doing. They're doing just the opposite. You have a Secretary of Education who doesn't believe in public education. What else can I say? The Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act has only been around for 40 some odd years. You would have thought she would have known what it was when she came for her hearing. You know, the cuts to low-income home energy assistance, as we sit here in Chicago, it's cold in the winter. What are you supposed to do? We need to keep telling these stories. We need to keep holding this administration accountable. We need to keep leading with our values. I had the privilege of working at the Justice Department for over 14 years. I prosecuted a police officer in LA pre-Rodney King, if you want to get a sense of how old I am. Okay, I had hair, I had no replacement parts. It was in the early 90s. And you know what, folks? I'm proud of the fact that when I had the privilege of running the Civil Rights Division, we entered into more consent decrees in the 3 years I was there than in the previous 15 years that we were under the new law. And I did so because it works for communities. It works for the police department. The Los Angeles Police Department is better off today than it was under Daryl Gates because of the consent decree, because of leadership in the department, because of leadership and advocacy in the community. And you have an attorney general today who's trying to turn that clock back. In my home state of Maryland, the mayor of Baltimore had to say, no, we want this consent decree. And Jeff Sessions is saying, no, we know better. You don't know better, sir. You're living in the world of false choices. They ask the wrong questions. on the police context. Whose side are you on? You on the police's side? You on the community side? That's the wrong question. Every police officer I've ever talked to has said to me, my most valuable currency is the trust of the community. If you don't have the trust of the community, you don't have anything. And that is why I did so much work in this setting. I did it to make our community safer. I did it to make the job of a police officer safer. And I'm proud that we were able to make progress. And I can't tell you the number of officers and police chiefs who would come up to me privately and say, Tom, I'm glad you're here. So that's what's at stake. And then you see what's happening in the voting context at the Department of Justice. And John Lewis said not too long ago, this is the words of John Lewis, people stood in unmovable lines. They had to pass a so-called literacy test, pay a poll tax. On one occasion, a man was asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. On another occasion, one was asked to count the number of jelly beans in a jar, all to keep them from casting their ballots. Well, folks, we thought these days were behind us. And maybe they're not asking folks to count jelly beans, but you know what? Voter suppression is a staple in the Republican playbook. And we have to understand that. And unfortunately, this Attorney General is aiding and abetting those efforts. This so-called Voter Suppression Commission is an absolute sham. The person running it, the Secretary of State of Kansas, was recently sanctioned by a federal judge in Kansas for lack of candor in connection with a voting case. It is a sham. And we must hold them accountable. That's why we established our own commission at the DNC. And so we continue to see these efforts to turn back the clock, and it is undeniably, tragically ironic that when we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, we found ourselves playing more defense than offense. But you know what, folks? When you have the likes of Reverend Vivian and Reverend Jackson here, we know what we have to do. Organize, organize, organize. And that's exactly what we're doing at the DNC. Our DNC has a new mission, folks. We're not simply here to elect the President of the United States. We are in existence to help elect people from the school board to the Senate, up and down the ballot. And we do so by helping to build strong parties everywhere and strong partnerships everywhere. Now, I want to be honest with you. I took this job and I ran for this job because I knew we had to do better. And as I've come into this job, I've made a lot of house calls, and they have affirmed to me that the Democratic Party needs to up its game. We need to organize, organize, organize. We need to be in communities, not just in the 3 months in the run-up to the election. I'll never forget the woman who told me in Detroit at the African-American church I visited, you can't show up at my church every 4th October and pretend that you care. That's not organizing. And that is disrespectful to a constituency that has been the most loyal constituency of the Democratic Party. And I'm here to tell you that we listen and we absolutely appreciate the fact that we need to up our game as a Democratic Party. And we up our game by making sure we are present 12 months a year. The Democratic Party all too frequently was the accordion. We expand in a presidential cycle. We contract in between, and we scratch our heads and wonder why we lose midterms. We've got to eliminate the term off year from our lexicon. Every year is an on year. Every day is an on day. Every day we must be talking to people. That is why we initiated a program that we're calling Resistance Summer. We had events to lead off this program in every single state. We had 120 events, many partners. It's a down payment on the new DNC, a DNC in which we're out there talking to people. We're out there standing up for our colleagues who are taking it on the chin. The labor movement is taking it on the chin. The Supreme Court is poised to make it very difficult for unions in the public sector to organize. And by the way, If and when they succeed there, the private sector union movement is next. And as my friend Lee Saunders said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And Republicans want to put the labor movement on the menu. We will not allow that to happen. And we will do that by organizing, organizing, organizing. It's exactly what we're going to do. And we will make sure that we're talking to folks, that we're listening and learning from you. I was in Flint when I worked in the administration, and then more recently. And you know what, folks? When you don't have access to safe drinking water, that is a fundamental human right violation. And we must be there for them. And that is exactly what we're doing. We are organizing, organizing, organizing. We're building a Democratic Party that works for everyone in every zip code. I talk to people in rural America who feel isolated from the party. I talk to people in Detroit and Chicago and elsewhere who feel isolated, and we are working to change that. But we must do it together because we're all in this boat together. And that's why I am here to say we need your partnership. And what I hear most from people is, Tom, we not only need to organize, but we need to articulate clearly what we stand for as a Democratic Party. Well, let me tell you what Democrats stand for. We are the party that stands for a future of inclusion and opportunity for all America, for all Americans. We believe that nobody who works a full-time job in this country should have to live in poverty. Nobody should ever have to choose between a gallon of milk or a gallon of gas or the prescription drugs. That's not an America that we want to live in. We believe that zip code should never determine destiny. We believe that our Secretary of Education ought to believe in public education. We believe that our EPA administrator ought to understand that climate change is very real. We believe that when unions succeed, America succeeds, and we must support a strong union movement. We believe that we should be building more schools, not prisons. We believe in second chances for everyone. And you know what, folks? I have an ambivalent relationship with the term second chance because I've met so many people in the course of the privilege I've had of doing various jobs in public service. I've met so many people who haven't had a fair first chance. And so we must make sure that everybody has a fair first chance as well as a fair second chance. We believe that clean drinking water is a basic human right. We believe that when women succeed, America succeeds. We believe that police departments and communities can and must work together to ensure safety, to ensure prosperity in their communities. Because as I said before, the best currency any police officer has is the trust of the community. We believe as Democrats that health care is a right for all and not a privilege for a few. And we will continue to fight like heck on that issue. We believe in workers' rights and women's rights. We believe in voting rights and LGBT rights. We know that we can be an America that works for everyone because we believe that our diversity is our greatest strength. Our immigrant heritage is what brought us such strength in America. And we believe that when we put hope on the ballot, we do well. And when we allow others to put fear in the eyes of people, we don't do so hot. And so that's what we're doing, folks. We're moving forward. And while we have undeniable stress tests and challenges, I leave you with the words of a guy that I've gotten to know recently. His name is Walter Isaacson, a wonderful author and storyteller, written biographies of the likes of Steve Jobs and Ben Franklin and others. And he wrote a biography of a guy named Albert Einstein. And in this story, he tells the story of letters that Albert Einstein wrote to his son in the 1950s, in the height of the McCarthy era. And his letters went like this, his first letters. What's going on with this country? I fled Nazi Germany to escape the pathologies of Hitler, and I see in McCarthy so many of the same dark forces. And then you fast forward a year or two later, after McCarthy's been censured and reduced to the dustbin of history. And he writes another letter to his son in which he says, What a country. I love this country. It has this gyroscope. That was his word. And just when you think the gyroscope is spinning out of control, it rights itself. Well, folks, the gyroscope is not a piece of technology. The gyroscope is the collective power of we. It's what President Obama said down in Selma, commemorating the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, when he said the most important word in a democracy is that simple two-letter word, we. Reverend Vivian's been the gyroscope throughout his life. Reverend Jackson's been the gyroscope. The union movement has been the gyroscope. John Rogers has been the gyroscope of corporate social responsibility. Y'all have been the gyroscope. And the reason I have optimism, folks, is that while we don't have the White House right now, and we don't have the Senate, and we don't have the House, we've got something that's way more powerful. We've got the gyroscope. We got to take that gyroscope to Virginia and New Jersey this year so that we win elections there, and we take this gyroscope to school board races and mayor's races, and we win for Democrats there. Because when we elect good Democrats and when we lead with our values, the values that I've outlined, we build an America that works for everyone. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your activism. Continue to be the gyroscope. Thank you very much.